Fremont really has a retention-based strategy in terms of nurturing growth of our different industries. That means that we're spending a lot of time with our companies, and we visit over 50 companies a year, and the mayor's with us on a good number of those visits, and it's all about finding out what people need to be successful and to grow and to see how we can be helpful in that growth proposition. So I have a PowerPoint that we can launch into. My bio's online, you can read it. And what we're really focusing on today is the Internet of Things, which is a theme of this conference and also a theme of our economic development activity and also our innovation district. And we like to think of ourselves in Fremont as the hardware side of the Bay. So not to be confused with the, the dynamo software environment that you see across the Bay. This has always been the place where things have been made in Silicon Valley. One of the little factoids that you might get out of the presentation today that you did not know about Fremont is that there are about close to 900 manufacturing companies or in the manufacturing supply chain. So it's definitely our calling card. But let's start with a couple, there you go. See, I brought the hardware here as an illustration, show that we really mean it. Here we go, let's go to the next slide. Thank you, oh perfect. So just a couple facts, since you've come here to Fremont today, this may be an area that you're familiar with or maybe not, but Fremont is the fourth largest city in the Bay Area, at about 250,000 people. We're about, we can go ahead and, oh, I have the ability to do that, don't I? Yes, maybe. Where am I pointing at? There we go. So we're 90 square miles. I think why that factoid is important is that we have room for companies to scale, which is an important part of growth. It would be very difficult to outgrow Fremont. We have a few industries that we're really focused on, clean tech and biotech in particular, but we have a strong legacy in the semiconductor world, which means that we have a lot of smart engineers who know a lot about sensor technology, and that is fed into all kinds of other industries as well. We have, actually, this number is outdated. We've been adding so much R&D flex industrial space over the last couple of years that actually that number is about 50 million square feet of R&D space, and that represents 65%, probably more now, of all of the R&D space in the East Bay. And here's another little known fact about Fremont. We have the most startups per capita in the entire nation. And there we go. I passed my business card to somebody today, and they kind of chuckled to themselves because it says, think Fremont, think Silicon Valley. Maybe everyone doesn't necessarily think of Fremont yet as in the heart of Silicon Valley. But in fact, we think if you look at the broader technology ecosystem, and with Tesla having such an important presence in Fremont and showing the future of advanced manufacturing and how the automation of manufacturing can influence so many other industries beyond the ones that traditionally we think of, then in fact Fremont very much is playing an important role and really influencing a lot of other industries besides. But one that I wanted to spend just a minute focusing on is clean tech. This number is also outdated. We probably have over 50 now clean tech companies. And we like to say that those companies are kind of distributed throughout the smart grid value chain. So we don't necessarily cover all 12 industries that make up clean technology, but we're very heavily represented in energy storage, energy efficiency, solar. In fact, probably half of the 50 are solar companies. Communications, and of course Tesla electric vehicles. But we also have electric bikes and electric scooters. If you're familiar with Gen Z, that's a burgeoning sector for us. And as you know, there are many other EV companies that are coming out of the woodwork. That really is our transportation future. And so we're going to be seeing that part of the clean tech industry growing here as well. Everyone's very familiar with Tesla and Solar City and other clean tech tenants, but maybe not everyone is familiar with the fact that biotechnology is also a large base for Fremont. So of the 1,100 Bay Area companies, 80 plus are in Fremont. We've done some analysis on the biotech industry recently. It's kind of shown a little bit in this kind of a snippet of an infographic, which I actually have hard copies of if you're interested. But one of the calling cards for biotechnology in the Bay Area is that it's actually heavily weighted toward manufacturing. And so half of those 1,100 companies in the Bay Area are actually manufacturing their products right here in the broader Bay Area. And if you break it down into kind of 4 clusters, you can see that the largest percentage are weighted under medical equipment and medical devices versus pharmaceuticals and biotechnology, which actually get most of the press. But you can kind of see how it's clustering itself around the Silicon Valley, and the San Jose, Sunnyvale, Fremont part, the bottom part of the U of the Bay, is really where most of that manufacturing is occurring. What's interesting is that even though we talked earlier about Silicon Valley being known for its software expertise, we're very much a balanced metro, and we're probably one of the only metropolitan areas in the United States that shows this kind of a balance between software and manufacturing employees. And the other thing that's interesting about this, we think, and maybe we put more emphasis on the manufacturing side of the equation, because we know that for every advanced manufacturing job, there are another 2.2 jobs that are created. And a lot of you that are here today are evidence of that, and your broader networks and supply chains that are supporting what you do. So you understand how this works. And all of this is gaining some steam because we know that the dynamics around manufacturing are changing. I'm not going to go into this too much because Wellex can tell this story better than anyone about all the different factors that are driving manufacturing growth in the Bay Area. The emphasis on quality, customer service, the ability to serve one of the most important markets in the world, the importance of IP protection, et cetera. But we're really finding that all of these dynamics are creating an environment here for manufacturing to grow and be tremendously successful, and it's happened rather quickly. This is not a new quote, but I think it's extremely relevant for us to keep in mind in terms of the support that we're giving to manufacturing and how it grows in the Bay Area. Without scaling, we don't lose just jobs, we lose our new technologies and ultimately damage our capacity to innovate. And we all know that when manufacturing went overseas and the US really lost out on that value proposition, that a lot of the research and development went along with it. And it was a huge loss to our country. But we see that coming back in a large way. I think one of the physical examples of that is the Seagate building that used to be Solyndra. That represents their R&D operation that up until very recently was centered in Singapore. So we're seeing a lot of those R&D jobs coming back. What's interesting is that we're having to rebuild the network that supports manufacturing, and it gives me great pleasure to give this presentation here at Wellex today because Wellex is part of the support system that's really emerging to be able to help build this back up again. There are all kinds of wonderful tools out there that are helping people get from the idea to the prototype stage, things like 3D printing and file sharing, crowdfunding, little prototyping kits. These are all things that are making it easier for an inventor to start scaling their idea. But then once that idea is ready to be manufactured, the chart on the right shows all the different kind of stages within the manufacturing process, and there are starting to be local partners that are coming in at different stages of that continuum to be able to help bring the product to market. And as I said, Wellex really understands this well, and they're showing how they can come in and help people throughout all those different stages. So not just coming in at the very end, but coming in sooner than that and helping companies to scale. I think without the emphasis and the growth in the Internet of Things, a lot of this conversation would not be possible, but clearly that's changed the conversation. A lot of the products that you see here on the screen are what's driving manufacturing innovation in the Bay Area. And I think that really the Silicon Valley cannot be underestimated in terms of its importance in the Internet of Things, because obviously the pre-existing concentration of the software industry is needed for the hardware-software convergence. No one can do that better than the Silicon Valley. And we think that Fremont without Fremont, you actually can't do IoT in the Bay Area because we have the hardware expertise, and we've come to the realization that you cannot overlay hardware into a software environment. We're never going to see a major manufacturing metropolis emerge in Palo Alto. It's not going to happen. We love Palo Alto, but they're just not built for that. Whereas Fremont already has a wealth of contract manufacturers like Wellex and other experts who know how to get this done, and we have the right kind of spaces for them to do it. So that's good. Manufacturing in Fremont, as I mentioned before, we've got a lot of people who are in this industry. A quarter of our population is working in manufacturing, and we have this robust supply chain that supports it. So these are the things that I think are prerequisites for a successful manufacturing metropolis, right? You have to have flexible spaces, you have to have flexible districts that preserve the industrial use but also make it possible for people to live and get on transit. And you need workers who know how to adapt and grow with some of the changing needs of the industry. And I'm happy to say that Fremont has all three. The Innovation District that Mayor Harrison introduced to you, we're in it right now. It includes this kind of everything within the orange boundaries. And I think the best way to describe an innovation district is where those three circles converge, where you have economic assets, physical assets, and networking assets that all come together, and the magic kind of happens in the middle, in the convergence of all three. There are not many great examples of this in the United States. There are a few. We are what I would call an emerging innovation district, and all kinds of amazing things happen when this works. And I put some of those on the slide, but in the interest of time, I'm going to gloss over because I'm going to end on time. When you have more time, I'd love to come talk to your company or your group specifically about our Warm Springs environment. A lot of you know that BART will be arriving just down the street in a matter of a couple of months, and we have the opportunity to connect that transit hub to tens of thousands of jobs in our immediate vicinity, and the opportunity to grow by tens of thousands of jobs in the future. We're also doing some other kind of avant-garde things in this district, recognizing that we need less office park and more ecosystem. A lot of the new workforce wants a lot more weird going on. They need it to be fun and interesting, and they don't want it to be a sterile office park anymore. And so we have big plans. When you kind of rode in today, it probably felt like you're coming down a country road. Well, guess what? In the next couple of years, there's going to be big changes in Warm Springs because of BART and because of huge investment that's being made by the commercial real estate community and also the residential real estate community to capitalize on the transit opportunity. So I will leave you with just a thought that we really believe that the greatest opportunity here is to nurture the broader ecosystem. So we're focused on helping startups. We have a new Fremont Startup Grind chapter that meets regularly, and so you can look that up online. And then I also wanted to let you know about an event that we're having in August that really targets the growth of small-scale manufacturers, the makers, if you will, maybe even pre the stage that you're at. But that's happening 9:30 a.m. August 17th at Ellison Technologies, and it's really talking about what kind of real estate opportunities we need to create and nurture in order for that group to get to the stage maybe where you're at now, where ultimately they would team up with a Wellex or another Bay Area or Fremont manufacturer to grow their business. So with that, I will leave some contact information. Like I said, this is just a kind of cursory overview of some of the opportunities here and how we're thinking about the Internet of Things and how we can help with that. But would love to continue the conversation with you and active on all of those mediums. So thank you so much for the invitation.